I smell a roast.
Okay, so guys, if you're watching this the day this comes out, once again, happy Halloween. It is one of my favorite times of year, probably my favorite holiday.
Yeah, it's definitely the best holiday, right? For
Exactly.
at least Death Wish employees.
And the last couple times that we've done shows in or around a holiday, we've used the roast as a time to kind of go through it. And the entire month of the Fuel by Death show, if you guys missed the last couple weeks, I've been keeping the theme of Halloween throughout all the roasts and roasting little parts of it throughout it. And this time we're just going to roast the tradition on a whole. Because last week we talked about trick-or-treating, and in that we talked about how there was this ancient Celtic holiday, and I was corrected on how to pronounce it during the show. It's pronounced Samhain. It's written Samhain, but it's pronounced Samhain. It's the ancient Celtic holiday where people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts. This would happen traditionally around October 31st or November 1st. The reason why is they celebrated their new year this time. And that totally makes sense because it was the end of harvest and the beginning of winter. So it was kind of like death and rebirth kind of thing. Yeah. And they believed that the boundary between the living and the dead, the worlds of the living and the dead, were blurred at that time. So the dead could roam the earth. So it was that whole idea of spooky and kind of appeasing your dead and that kind of thing. And then during the 8th century, when Christianity started to, kind of push out, the pagan, holidays and that kind of stuff, Pope Gregory III declared November 1st All Saints' Day to kind of honor that tradition. And the evening before was referred to as All Hallows' Eve. Now you can see how Halloween kind of came into the lexicon from that. And then when the tradition came to America, it was extremely limited to in New England because of the strict Protestant communities that peppered New England at the time. It was very popular in Maryland and in some of the South because it wasn't as strict and Protestant at that time. And it was weird back in the colonial times, like colonial times, and then or even the late 1800s, early 1900s. It was weird. I mean, that's super creepy. I mean, it just it gets to be only in the 50s, like we talked about last week, where Halloween, like we know it today, becoming the Halloween that we know. The telling of stories of the dead and harvest parties started to become more commonplace. And then when the Irish immigrants, again, like we talked about on prior roasts, when the Irish immigrants came over to this country, they helped shape this holiday in specific much, much more because their traditions of having parties on the harvest, of trick-or-treating, going door to door and singing songs and wanting soul cakes and that kind of thing, and carving gourds, which they then came over here and found pumpkins and making jack-o'-lanterns, all that kind of got roped into it, and then we kind of started to coalesce into what Halloween is today.
Just blurring all the lines.
Of course. Today, Americans spend $6 billion annually on Halloween festivities. Wow. That makes it second only to Christmas.
Wow, that's insane.
It is really insane. Some traditions have been actually forgotten or not used as much anymore. Like I said, we got away from a lot of that pagan stuff, even the earlier colonial times.
We should get back to some of those, like bonfires and shit.
Exactly, like big bonfires. That's not a big thing anymore. Another thing that I didn't know is Halloween was centered around a romantic idea for unmarried women.
Ooh.
There are many different traditions about this, and some of them focused on the reassurance that if a woman was unmarried this Halloween, that she could do different practices or different traditions to ensure that she would fall into love and be married by next Halloween.
Sorry. No.
No. Oh, please. What were you going to say?
Well, were those things making her prettier?
Hey-o.
I didn't want to say it. He made me say it.
One such tradition was to name chestnuts, and then of the names of wanted suitors, guys that the girl would like to end up with, and then throw the chestnuts, place them in the hearth or place them in the fireplace. and then watch them burn. And then the chestnut that would burn to ash, completely to ash, that would be the name of the man that she would eventually end up with.
How would they know which one it was? Because it was burned to ash.
You'd put them, I mean, that's what I mean. You'd place them, okay, so John is here, and
Jeff is
Jebediah
here.
is here, and Jeff
Dustin's
is here. Yeah. So like you kind of see it.
I burned the brightest, by
which
the
is
way.
weird. Another tradition was a special sugary dish was concocted that a woman would eat before she went to bed on All Hallows Eve, and then in the hopes that she would dream of her future husband. Which, to me, if any of you guys out there have had a bunch of candy before you go to bed, I usually have nightmares. Because your mind is just crazy at that point. Or you're not falling asleep because you're on a sugar rush.
Right.
So it's kind of odd. Also, another one that I heard about, which was crazy, is the woman on Halloween would sit in front of the mirror and wish to see the reflection of the man she was going to marry come into the mirror. And this actually was born from wanting to see your dead loved ones in the mirror. People would do that back in the day, and
That must have worked once to start this off, right?
right, it might have been. And this is that tradition too that I'm sure you might have played it at parties or whatever.
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
Or that, which was popularized even further with the Candyman movies.
Right.
But
Right.
That same sense where you're kind of and I've done it, and I got freaked out before because you're in like it's usually a bathroom,
Yep.
and like all the lights are off, and you go Bloody Mary.
And you've been
Bloody Mary.
talking about it with your 5 friends
Right.
staying up late.
And if nobody's a dick,
And there's always one friend that's like, oh, yeah, I did it once, and my friend saw a red light. And
Yeah.
it's always something, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not even that. It's just I think back on it, and the times that I got freaked out the most, it was not when somebody was a dick, when you really tried to do it, and you were really quiet, and you said Bloody Mary for the 3rd time, and you look in that mirror, and your eyes play tricks on you because it's dark. You're seeing a reflection of yourself in the darkness.
You're on mushrooms.
That one too. But yeah, it can be a little freaky. But those are like some random weird. I didn't know that Halloween had so much to do with romance at one time.
Yeah, I guess so.
Do you?
It makes sense because it's right before they have to start wearing way too many clothes to present themselves correctly.
I guess, but I mean, if you go back to
even Halloween today is still kind of like a mating tradition where it's the last day women get to dress scantily before it gets too cold.
Goodness. But I mean,
Come on, Jeff, bring us through.
But I mean, I get what you're saying, but go back to the time of the Scarlet Letter and the Salem witch trials and shit like that. Everybody had way too many clothes on all the time.
It's a relative basis, Jeff. It's a turn of an ankle is all you needed back then.
That's true. Ooh, yeah, she's showing some ankle over there.
Showing some ankle. Did you see her wrist?
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Oh!
Do you guys have any weird traditions in your family or any weird Halloween stuff, that you've done? I'm trying to think. I really don't, tradition-wise. We were pretty much the normal American family. I would get my costume as a kid and go out. We talked about it last week with the trick-or-treating. I'd go out trick-or-treating every year. And
my parents would always have these big Halloween parties.
Really?
Big, and invite the whole family over.
Oh,
and then my mom
cool.
got really into putting on prosthetics and painting those. And so we would all have wicked costumes. And I remember we would set it up so the way you got into our house was a garage, and we'd set the garage up all spooky but once you open the door, it would blare scary music and strobe lights, and sometimes those firecrackers that I got that you pull apart and they blow up.
Yep.
We'd tie those to all the doors that everybody have to go through,
So
and then
cool.
somebody be dressed up as Freddy Krueger coming out from around the corner. I mean, we really got into it. My mother was horribly into decorating, so our house was next level with lights for all the holidays.
That's so cool. See, I didn't do any of that kind of stuff until I was older, like the haunted houses or the haunted hay rides or that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We didn't really do much of that when I was a kid. It was about trick-or-treating, and that was pretty much it. We had that parade through our cul-de-sac, like I said, you know, that kind of kicked off Halloween, and that was kind of like the neighborhood party, but it wasn't anything crazy like that. That's a lot of fun. So yeah, if you guys have anything, put it in the comments too. I wanted to finish by talking about some of the traditions around the world, because not everywhere celebrates Halloween. A lot of people, especially us Americans, we think, oh, everybody celebrates Halloween and Christmas and stuff like that. I know for a fact Australia could give two shits.
Really?
Yeah, they do not care about Halloween. They think we're silly for doing
Probably
it.
because somebody comes knocking on their door, they shoot them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they have enough scary shit in Australia that's trying to eat them.
Yeah, no.
Like, they don't
You're not going to wander around in the streets at night. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. But probably one of the most famous that everybody knows about is Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. Mexico and Latin America, November 1st and 2nd. The dead are celebrated. It's not just about, oh, the dead are coming back. It is a celebration. It's like all of our ancestors are coming back and are able to walk the earth this day, and we are able to not only celebrate them, but we are able to feel their spirit, feel their presence, and honor them, and have an incredibly cool and colorful party.
And drink tons of tequila.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. And so people put altars up in their homes that honor all of their deceased loved ones. They visit their graves. They have parties in the streets. It's an incredible
I'd like to
time.
be there for that.
Me too. And I know I've said this before in random other things that we've talked about, but one of the greatest depictions of it, if you guys haven't seen it yet, and it gives you all the feels,
yeah,
is Coco.
It's so good.
If you haven't watched the Pixar movie Coco, go check it out. It does a really good job with that whole tradition and really kind of teaches you if you've never really known a lot about it, which is really cool. Another one I heard about is in Japan. There is this thing called Kawasaki Halloween Parade, which takes place on October 28th. 4,000 costume participants come and take part in the largest parade in Japan. And it's so big that there are strict rules and guidelines for this parade. You can't just show up and be in it. You have to apply at least 2 months in advance, and there's an application fee just to be in this parade.
Wow.
Yes, and I believe they cut it off at 4,000.
Wow. Look at some of those costumes. I see a gremlin back there. You see the gremlin back there? That's so good.
Yeah,
is that a Furby? I can't.
Who
tell.
knows? In Japan, it's probably both. And a third thing we don't even know about, but that looks like a lot of fun and a lot of crazy stuff. And finally, in the Philippines, there's a tradition called, and I'm gonna get this wrong, Pangangalawala. Pangangalawala.
Sure.
Where children in the Philippines go door to door, singing songs and asking for prayers for those stuck in purgatory. And most times they are dressed in costume while they're doing it. So it's a much more reverence. We as Americans, we've used this as kind of like, let's buy a bunch of candy and
let's outdo the neighbors.
How slutty we can get with our costume.
Yeah.
And let's
how much can I drink?
Yeah, but
eat all the fucking candy.
It's much more about reverence around the world. I did find one final little tiny one in Britain. I didn't know about this, but I thought this was kind of cool. I might actually do this next year. In Britain, there's a tradition where at the stroke of midnight on Halloween, you turn off all the lights and you sit quietly for a couple minutes in your place to invite the dead to make contact with you.
In Britain?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's an older tradition, but
Let's
I
do
guess
it tonight.
Yeah, right. That's kind of cool. Is there anything? And this is kind of a broad situation, and if you guys can chime in on the comments yourself as well. But has anything really spooky ever happened to you on Halloween?
On Halloween, no, but a lot of spooky things have happened to me.
Oh yes, we both have lived in apartments that have been haunted. That's for sure. And I was trying to think about it before the show as well. If anything on Halloween has ever been spooky, and other than like maybe those Bloody Mary type scenarios, I don't think there's nothing that really stands out. Like, oh my God, that was.
No, I mean I remember one time I was trick or treating with my cousin as a kid, and there was one of those people out in the front yard dressed as a scarecrow, but it was really a person. But like I got all the way up to this dude, and I was like trying to figure out if he was real or not. I remember feeling his face, and I'm like, oh my God, it's actually warm. And that's when he jumped out and scared me, and it was, that was scary.
That's
but
scary.
But nothing phenomenal, nothing crazy.
Well, I mean, I didn't see anything. One Halloween when we were kids, we went to this small graveyard that was near like where we grew up. It was like one of those like Revolutionary War graveyards. There was only like a couple gravestones, and we hung out there and everything, and just the trees cracking and like being among the tombstones by yourself as a kid, with other kids and stuff like that. That was freaky as hell. We ran out of there. Like we stayed there for like a couple minutes. We're like, okay, we're done.
Okay.
I didn't see anything, but it was.
I'm not scared. Let's leave now.
It was still kind of creepy, but yeah, if there's anything that creepy happened to you guys, leave it in those comments. And I hope you guys all have a happy Halloween because it is a magical time. It's a magical time of the year, but it is like it brings so many different feelings than other holidays where you got, Christmas or Thanksgiving or
everything's always
Easter.
cheerful and bright and
Yeah.
like, yay, let's love each other and be. No, this is like let's get scared.
Yeah, let's get scared. Let's revere the dead. Let's honor the dead. It's pretty
And kill.
Yeah. Happy Halloween, everybody.